Imagine this. You wake up groggy, stumble into the kitchen, and realize there's no coffee. Terrifying, right? Now picture an entire government telling you coffee is illegal. Not just sold out at the store, not just a bad Starbucks day, straight up banned. That actually happened. In the 1600s, coffee was once accused of being the drink of the devil, and governments across Europe and the Middle East tried to outlaw it. But why was coffee once associated with the devil? Let's find out right here on History of Food. Coffee first spread out of the Middle East into Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries. In places like Yemen, Egypt, and the Ottoman Empire, coffee had already been around for a while. People gathered in public coffee houses called kahvekhane to sip, socialize, debate, and play games. Basically, they were the original Starbucks, of course, minus the Wi-Fi. But when coffee crossed into Christian Europe, it caused a stir. Some people adored it, while others were suspicious. Remember, this was an era when anything foreign, new, or stimulating was often considered dangerous. And coffee was very stimulating, both physically and socially. Not only did it keep people awake, it also kept them talking. And rulers don't usually like it when common folks get together to talk too much. So where did the drink of the devil reputation come from? Well, in some parts of Europe, church leaders argued that coffee was sinful because it came from the Islamic world. If wine was the Christian drink, coffee was seen as its dark, suspicious rival. A few priests even preached that sipping coffee was practically shaking hands with Satan. Legend has it that when coffee reached Rome, some members of the clergy begged Pope Clement VIII to ban it outright. They called it an invention of the devil designed to corrupt Christians. But the Pope, curious man that he was, decided to taste it himself before making a judgment. And here's the twist. He loved it, so much so that he supposedly declared, "This devil's drink is so delicious, we should cheat the devil by baptizing it." Thanks to that papal blessing, coffee survived its first major trial. But the controversy wasn't over yet. In the 1600s, coffee houses began popping up all across Europe, especially in England. They were nicknamed penny universities because for just a penny, you could buy a cup of coffee and join in lively discussions. Intellectuals, merchants, writers, and everyday people gathered to debate politics, literature, science, and gossip. Now, this might sound great to us, but to rulers, it was terrifying. Imagine being a king or queen and realizing your citizens were gathering in big groups, caffeinated out of their minds, and loudly questioning authority. Coffee houses weren't just about lattes. They became breeding grounds for ideas, revolutionary ideas. And governments hate revolutions almost as much as they hate people staying up past curfew. One of the most famous crackdowns happened in England under King Charles II. By the mid-1600s, London was buzzing, literally, with coffee houses. They were so popular that even the king's own court gossiped about him in these caffeinated hangouts. Charles wasn't a fan. He saw coffee houses as dangerous hubs of sedition, rumor, and anti-monarch chatter. So in 1675, he tried to shut them all down. He issued a proclamation banning coffee houses, claiming they spread false news and idle gossip. Sound familiar? It's like blaming Twitter for political unrest, except instead of tweets, it was guys with quills writing pamphlets after drinking too much espresso. But the ban didn't last. People were furious and the backlash was immediate. Coffee had become too beloved, and shutting down the coffee houses was like trying to ban memes today. You just can't stop it. Within a couple of weeks, Charles had to back down. Coffee had won. But Europe wasn't the only place coffee went on trial. In the Ottoman Empire, coffee faced some of its harshest critics. In the early 1600s, Sultan Murad IV of the Ottoman Empire declared coffee illegal, and he wasn't messing around. He made the punishments brutal. Anyone caught drinking coffee could be beaten, drowned, or executed. Yes, executed, for a latte. Why such extremes? Well, the Sultan feared coffee houses were places where dissent brewed alongside the drinks. And in fairness, he wasn't entirely wrong. Coffee houses did become centers for political discussion. But still, imagine risking your life just to get your morning fix. That's dedication. Despite the threats, people kept drinking it. Secret underground coffee houses appeared, and enforcement was inconsistent. The truth was, once people had a taste for coffee, it was nearly impossible to stamp it out. The more authorities tried to suppress it, the more desirable it became. It was the 1600s version of prohibition, and like alcohol later on, it didn't really work. Here's another twist. In 1674, a group of women in London published a pamphlet called The Women's Petition Against Coffee. But their complaint wasn't political, it was personal. They accused coffee of making their husbands useless. According to the petition, men who drank too much coffee became impotent, spent all their time in coffee houses instead of at home, and were generally unfruitful in bed. They almost call their husbands devil. Of course, the men responded with their own pamphlet defending coffee, claiming it actually made them more vigorous. Who was right? Hard to say. But the feud itself shows just how much coffee had invaded daily life. It wasn't just a drink anymore. It was part of culture, politics, and even marital drama. Despite all the attempts to ban it, from priests calling it satanic, to kings calling it dangerous, to women calling it useless, coffee only grew more popular. By the 18th century, it was firmly entrenched in Europe and beyond. Coffee houses became key meeting places during the Enlightenment, where ideas about science, democracy, and philosophy spread over steaming cups. You could argue that coffee fueled revolutions more than gunpowder did. Over time, the idea of coffee as the devil's drink disappeared. Instead, it became the fuel of progress, creativity, and productivity. The very thing rulers once feared, that coffee would make people think too much, turned out to be its greatest legacy. Today, we don't think twice about grabbing a cup of coffee. It's part of our daily routine, our office culture, our social lives. But a few centuries ago, it was a scandalous, world-changing beverage that shook governments to their core. So next time you sip your latte, remember, you're drinking something that was once feared, banned, and nearly condemned by the Pope. The devil's drink survived centuries of suspicion to become humanity's morning best friend. And honestly, thank goodness it did. Because without coffee, I'm not sure how half of us would survive Monday mornings. Until next time, thank you for watching.